Robert Lighthizer, China's fourfold war material production capacity represents an existential threat to U.S. national security. On February 2, 2025, Robert Lighthizer, the former U.S. trade representative under President Trump, provided a stark warning regarding the implications of China's economic policies and production capabilities on U.S. national security. In an interview with CBS's 60 Minutes, Lighthizer articulated his belief that China's dominance in material production, estimated to be 4 times that of the United States, constitutes an existential threat necessitating significant tariffs and a re-evaluation of trade relations. Key arguments made by Lighthizer. 1. Existential threat from China. Lighthizer claims that the unbalanced trade relationship with China has allowed the latter to amass considerable economic and military power at the expense of the U.S. He argues that approximately $1 trillion is transferred from the U.S. to China annually due to unfair trade practices, which ultimately undermines American economic stability and military readiness. Lighthizer posits that this transfer of wealth enables China to enhance its military capabilities, making it a formidable adversary in any potential conflict. 2. Advocacy for high tariffs. Lighthizer has been a longtime proponent of imposing high tariffs on Chinese imports, suggesting rates as high as 50 to 60%. He believes that such tariffs are crucial for achieving balanced trade and revitalizing American manufacturing. According to him, tariffs would not only help restore American jobs but also contribute to higher wages, defying the common economic perspective that such measures would lead to inflation and job losses. 3. Strategic decoupling. The former trade representative advocates for a strategy of strategic decoupling from China, which involves limiting investments and technology transfers between the two nations. He suggests implementing a trade policy that mirrors China's restrictive practices towards American companies, thereby prioritizing U.S. interests. 4. Historical context of tariffs. Lighthizer places his arguments within a historical context where tariffs have been employed by U.S. presidents as a tool for economic protection. He notes the decline of U.S. manufacturing jobs since around 2000, during which nearly 6 million jobs were lost over a decade, and emphasizes the need for a policy reversal to restore these vital industries. 5. Economic consequences and criticism. Critics, including economists like Mary Lovely, caution against the potential negative impacts of such tariffs on American consumers and industries reliant on imported goods. They argue that tariffs could lead to higher prices and job losses in sectors dependent on cheaper foreign products. Lighthizer, however, remains firm in his belief that the economic benefits of tariffs will outweigh these concerns. Diverse perspectives on the issue. The debate surrounding Lighthizer's views reflects a broader discourse on U.S. China relations and economic policy. Source 1 emphasizes Lighthizer's urgent call for action against China, framing the economic relationship as a direct threat to U.S. national security. This source highlights the critical need for tariffs to protect American interests. Source 2 delves deeper into the implications of tariffs not only on U.S.-China relations but also on U.S. ties with Canada and Mexico, particularly in the context of drug trafficking and trade disputes. This source illustrates the complexity of trade relationships and the potential for retaliation from U.S. allies. Source 3, while more informal, reiterates Lighthizer's views on social media, reflecting a grassroots understanding of his perspective on China's economic policies. Timeline of events. Lighthizer's role. Serving as Trump's trade representative during the first administration, Lighthizer was instrumental in negotiating trade agreements and advocating for tariffs on Chinese imports. February 2025, Lighthizer's appearance on 60 Minutes reignited discussions on the necessity of high tariffs and strategic decoupling from China, emphasizing the urgency of addressing the trade imbalance. Historical context. The backdrop of Lighthizer's comments is marked by the imposition of various tariffs on Chinese goods during Trump's presidency, reflecting a significant shift in U.S. trade policy. Conclusion. Lighthizer's perspective presents a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, focusing on countering China's rising influence through strategic tariffs and a re-evaluation of economic relationships. His arguments underscore the complexities of balancing national security interests with the realities of global trade. As the U.S. navigates its trade relationship with China and other partners, Lighthizer's insights will likely continue to shape discussions around tariffs and economic policy in the years to come. Robert Lighthizer's assertions regarding China's economic capabilities and their implications for U.S. national security reveal several counterintuitive insights about trade policies and their broader economic effects. 1. Perception of threat versus interdependence. Lighthizer frames China's production capacity as an existential threat, arguing that China's ability to produce war materials outstrips the U.S. fourfold. This perspective suggests a zero-sum view of international relations where one nation's gain is inherently a loss for another. However, this view contrasts sharply with the long-standing economic argument that trade interdependence can foster cooperation and reduce the likelihood of conflict. By focusing solely on the threat posed by China's growth, Lighthizer overlooks how mutual economic interests can serve as a stabilizing force in international relations. 2. Tariffs as a solution to trade imbalances. Lighthizer advocates for substantial tariffs up to 60% as a remedy for the trade imbalance with China, which he claims siphons wealth from the U.S. to China. However, this notion runs counter to mainstream economic theory, which posits that tariffs can lead to higher prices for consumers and potential job losses in sectors reliant on imported goods. Critics argue that tariffs do not merely penalize foreign producers but ultimately impact American consumers, who bear the cost of these tariffs through increased prices and reduced availability of goods. Thus, while Lighthizer views tariffs as a means to restore balance, the unintended consequences could exacerbate economic challenges for ordinary Americans. 3. Employment implications. Lighthizer is optimistic that tariffs will rejuvenate U.S. manufacturing and create jobs, asserting that companies will adapt to the new economic environment. This assumption defies historical evidence, where previous tariff implementations often resulted in job creation in protected industries but led to significant job losses in others. For instance, while tariffs on steel protected some steel jobs, studies indicate that the overall effect was a net job loss across the economy. This highlights a complex reality where the benefits of tariffs are not distributed evenly and can harm the very workforce they are intended to protect. 4. Strategic decoupling. The idea of strategic decoupling from China, as proposed by Lighthizer, suggests a move towards isolationism in trade relations. This approach contradicts the growing consensus among economists that globalization and interconnected supply chains enhance economic resilience and innovation. By advocating for a decoupled relationship, Lighthizer may inadvertently promote a less robust economic environment that stifles competition and innovation, ultimately undermining the very industries he seeks to protect. 5. Myth of tariffs as attacks on foreign countries. Lighthizer, echoing President Trump's rhetoric, claims that tariffs are taxes on foreign countries. Economists refute this notion, clarifying that the burden of tariffs typically falls on American importers, who then pass these costs on to consumers. This misconception perpetuates a misleading narrative about trade policy, obscuring the reality that tariffs can lead to higher costs for U.S. consumers and businesses rather than serving as a punitive measure against foreign adversaries. 6. Historical context of tariffs. Lighthizer points to the historical use of tariffs by U.S. presidents as a justification for current policy proposals. However, this view neglects the lessons learned from history, particularly the detrimental effects of high tariffs during the Great Depression, which exacerbated economic woes. The historical record suggests that while tariffs may have been a common tool, their effectiveness in achieving long-term economic stability and growth is highly questionable. 7. Assumptions about manufacturing renaissance. Lighthizer's vision of a manufacturing renaissance in the U.S. driven by tariffs and policy changes assumes that American industries will respond positively to protectionist measures. This perspective overlooks the complexities of modern manufacturing, where competitiveness often hinges on factors such as innovation, labor costs, and global supply chains. A simplistic reliance on tariffs may fail to address the underlying structural issues facing the U.S. manufacturing sector, potentially leading to stagnation rather than revitalization. These counterintuitive insights illuminate the complexities of trade policy and its far-reaching implications for the U.S. economy and national security. Lighthizer's perspective, while grounded in a specific ideological framework, invites scrutiny regarding the efficacy and consequences of proposed measures in a deeply interconnected global economy. Robert Lighthizer's perspective on China's economic and military dominance as an existential threat to U.S. national security presents several critical insights that may be overlooked by many observers. Here are key points that deserve deeper scrutiny, along with their significance. 1. China's manufacturing capacity. Lighthizer emphasizes that China's material production capacity is 4 times greater than that of the U.S. This statistic is significant because it highlights a crucial asymmetry in military preparedness. The ability to produce military materials quickly and in large quantities could determine the outcome of any potential conflict. Most discussions around U.S. China relations typically focus on trade imbalances or tariffs, overlooking how this manufacturing capacity translates into military capabilities. 2. Transfer of wealth to adversaries. Lighthizer mentions a staggering annual transfer of approximately $1 trillion from the U.S. to China stemming from unbalanced trade practices. This figure is significant because it not only reflects economic losses but also implies that this wealth is being used by China to enhance its military and technological position globally. The broader implications of this wealth transfer extend beyond economics, influencing geopolitical stability and American influence in the world. 3. Strategic decoupling. Lighthizer's advocacy for a strategic decoupling from China is a pivotal point that often gets overshadowed by the focus on tariffs. This concept involves not just imposing tariffs but fundamentally rethinking the U.S. China economic relationship by restricting investments and technology transfers. The significance of this approach lies in its potential to reshape global supply chains and diminish China's leverage over critical technologies and industries, which many may underestimate. 4. Historical context of tariffs. The historical reference to tariffs as a tool used by U.S. presidents throughout history is essential. While tariffs have been criticized for their potential to exacerbate economic downturns, Lighthizer positions them as a necessary response to a changing global landscape. This context prompts a reconsideration of how trade policy has traditionally been used as a tool for national security, a perspective that is often lost in contemporary debates centered solely on economic theory. 5. Job creation versus job losses. Lighthizer argues that tariffs will ultimately lead to job creation and higher wages in the U.S. This claim is contentious and deserves attention because it raises questions about the broader impact of such policies on the economy. Critics like economist Mary Lovely argue that the reality of tariffs often leads to higher prices for consumers and job losses in industries reliant on imported goods. The significance here is the need for a nuanced understanding of the economic trade-offs involved in implementing tariffs, which can easily be oversimplified in public discourse. 6. Military readiness and economic policy. Lighthizer connects economic policy directly to national security, arguing that a strong economy is essential for military readiness. This linkage is crucial but often overlooked in discussions about trade and tariffs. By framing economic policy as a matter of national defense, Lighthizer highlights a proactive approach to safeguarding American interests, suggesting that economic resilience is integral to maintaining global power dynamics. 7. Consumer impact of tariffs. The argument that tariffs primarily act as a tax on consumers rather than foreign producers is significant. Many people may not fully grasp that the costs associated with tariffs can lead to increased prices for everyday goods. This understanding is vital for informed public discourse about the implications of trade policy, particularly as it relates to the average American's economic well-being. 8. Broader economic policy integration. Lighthizer insists that tariffs should be part of a broader economic strategy that includes tax cuts, spending cuts, increased energy production, and regulatory reduction. This holistic view is significant because it suggests that tariffs alone will not solve the underlying problems facing American manufacturing. The interconnection of various economic policies is essential for achieving sustainable growth, a point that may be glossed over in discussions focused solely on tariffs. 9. Potential for retaliation in trade wars. The possibility of retaliation from trading partners like Canada and Mexico is another critical aspect that Lighthizer acknowledges. The escalation of a trade war could have dire consequences for American businesses that rely on global trade networks. This dynamic underscores the importance of considering the broader geopolitical ramifications of aggressive tariff policies, which may be underestimated by policymakers and the public alike. 10. Future of U.S. manufacturing. The vision of a manufacturing renaissance in the U.S. bolstered by tariffs and strategic policy changes is optimistic but raises questions about its feasibility. The skepticism expressed by economists suggests that achieving this vision may require more than just tariffs. It necessitates a comprehensive approach to revitalizing American manufacturing that includes investment in technology, workforce training, and infrastructure. In summary, Robert Lighthizer's views on China and U.S. trade policy encapsulate a complex interplay of economic and national security issues. The significance of these points lies in their potential to reshape public understanding of U.S. China relations, the role of tariffs, and the broader implications for American prosperity and security as the global landscape continues to evolve. These discussions will be vital in determining the future trajectory of U.S. economic and foreign policy. 1. Existential threat and trade imbalance. Robert Lighthizer emphasizes that China's superior material production capacity poses a significant national security risk to the U.S. He argues that the annual transfer of approximately $1 trillion from the U.S. to China due to unbalanced trade practices enables China to enhance its military and technological capabilities. Lighthizer believes that this imbalance creates a precarious situation for the U.S., which must reassess its economic relationships to ensure national security. This point invites deeper analysis of the geopolitical implications of trade imbalances and the potential consequences for U.S. foreign policy and defense strategies. 2. Advocacy for tariffs. Lighthizer's strong support for imposing high tariffs on Chinese imports up to 60% is a critical aspect of his strategy to achieve balanced trade and rejuvenate U.S. manufacturing. He argues that these tariffs would not only counteract the economic disadvantages faced by American businesses but also create jobs and increase wages domestically. This point raises important questions about the effectiveness of tariffs as a trade policy tool, including potential inflationary impacts, job losses in sectors reliant on imports, and the broader effects on the consumer economy. 3. Strategic decoupling. Lighthizer advocates for a strategy of strategic decoupling from China, which involves limiting investments and ensuring no technology transfer occurs unless it serves American interests. This proposed decoupling reflects a broader trend in U.S. policy aimed at reducing reliance on China, examining how this might reshape global supply chains, affect U.S. China relations, and influence other nations' economic strategies. Analyzing the feasibility and potential outcomes of such decoupling can provide insights into the future landscape of international trade and security dynamics. 4. Economic consequences and counterarguments. While Lighthizer is optimistic about the economic benefits of tariffs, critics argue that such measures may lead to higher consumer prices and job losses in affected industries. Economic experts warn that tariffs could burden American consumers and lead to a net loss of jobs, particularly in sectors that rely heavily on imported goods. This point invites a critical examination of the economic theories surrounding tariffs, the historical efficacy of such measures, and the potential trade-offs between national security and economic prosperity. Analyzing these counterarguments could enrich the discussion around the efficacy of protectionist policies versus free trade in the current global economic context. 1. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act 1930. This was one of the most infamous protectionist measures in U.S. history, implemented during the Great Depression. The act raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods aiming to protect American industries from foreign competition. However, it led to retaliatory tariffs from other countries, significantly exacerbating the global economic downturn. Economists argue that the Smoot-Hawley tariff worsened the depression as international trade plummeted, leading to further job losses and economic instability. 2. The Trade Expansion Act 1962. This act was a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, allowing the president to negotiate tariff reductions on a reciprocal basis. It marked a departure from previous protectionist policies and aimed to promote international trade. The act facilitated the establishment of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade GATT, which aimed to reduce trade barriers globally. While it initially boosted U.S. exports, critics argue that it also led to the decline of certain American industries as competition from abroad increased, raising concerns similar to those expressed by Lighthizer regarding national security and economic independence. 3. The U.S. China trade war 2018-present. Initiated by the Trump administration, this trade conflict arose from allegations of unfair trade practices by China, including intellectual property theft and trade imbalances. In response, the U.S. imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, prompting retaliatory measures from China. The trade war has raised concerns about its impact on global supply chains, U.S. manufacturing jobs, and economic growth. Advocates for tariffs like Lighthizer argue that they are necessary to protect national security and address economic imbalances, while opponents warn about potential inflation and job losses in affected industries. Future outlook: predictions on U.S. China trade relations and national security. The discourse surrounding U.S. China relations, particularly as articulated by Robert Lighthizer, presents a critical juncture for the future of American trade policy and national security. Given the gravity of his assertions regarding China's status as an existential threat, several predictions can be made about the trajectory of U.S.-China relations and the implications for the U.S. economy and military readiness. 1. Increased protectionism and trade wars, as Lighthizer advocates for significant tariffs up to 60% on Chinese imports. It is highly likely that the U.S. will continue to adopt a more protectionist stance. This could lead to a series of retaliatory measures from China and possibly other trading partners, resulting in a protracted trade war. The implications of this could manifest in higher prices for consumers and potential job losses in sectors reliant on imported goods. As companies adjust to these tariffs, we may see a shift in supply chains, with businesses seeking to source materials and products from countries outside of China. 2. Resurgence of U.S. manufacturing. Lighthizer's vision for a manufacturing renaissance in the U.S. could gain traction as tariffs compel companies to bring production back to American soil. However, this resurgence may be uneven, benefiting certain sectors like technology and defense more than others. If successful, this could lead to job creation and wage growth in manufacturing, however. The transition may also face hurdles, including the need for skilled labor and investment in infrastructure. 3. Strategic decoupling. The idea of strategic decoupling from China will likely become a foundational principle of U.S. trade policy. This could involve limiting technology transfers, investment restrictions, and fostering domestic capabilities in critical industries such as semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. As the U.S. attempts to reduce its reliance on Chinese goods, we may witness an increase in government initiatives to support domestic innovation and manufacturing. For rising national security concerns, Lighthizer's emphasis on national security will likely drive U.S. policy, leading to increased scrutiny of Chinese investments in American firms and technology. The narrative of China as a competitor could become entrenched, influencing bipartisan support for policies aimed at countering Chinese influence globally. This may also extend to alliances with other countries, as the U.S. seeks to present a united front against perceived threats from China. 5. Economic consequences and consumer impact. While Lighthizer remains optimistic about the potential economic benefits of tariffs, the reality may involve a complex interplay of economic forces. The anticipated job creation in manufacturing may be offset by job losses in other sectors, particularly those dependent on international trade. Consumers may experience higher prices for goods, leading to inflationary pressures that could impact household budgets. Critics argue that the long-term economic ramifications of tariffs may not align with the short-term benefits proposed. 6. Geopolitical tensions and military preparedness. As the U.S. enhances its military readiness in response to perceived threats from China, we may see an increase in defense spending and military cooperation with allies in the Indo-Pacific region. This could lead to heightened tensions, particularly in contested areas like the South China Sea, where both nations have strategic interests. The U.S. may also invest in cyber capabilities to counteract Chinese espionage and technology theft, further escalating the technological arms race. 7. Public sentiment and political landscape. The narrative around U.S. China relations could drive public sentiment, influencing future elections and policy decisions. If the American public perceives tariffs and protectionist policies as beneficial in restoring the middle class and protecting jobs, there may be continued support for such measures. Conversely, if economic hardships arise as a result of these policies, public discontent could lead to calls for a re-evaluation of trade strategies. 8. Long-term economic resilience. Over the next decade, the U.S. may undergo a transformation in its economic landscape, potentially emerging as a more self-reliant and resilient economy. However, this transformation will require substantial investments in education, technology, and infrastructure to ensure that American workers are equipped for the jobs of the future. The focus on fostering innovation and competitiveness will be essential in sustaining economic growth in an increasingly multipolar world. In conclusion, the future of U.S. China trade relations, as influenced by Lighthizer's perspective, suggests a landscape marked by increased protectionism, strategic decoupling, and heightened national security concerns. While the potential for a revitalized American manufacturing sector exists, the path forward will involve navigating complex economic realities and geopolitical dynamics that will shape the U.S. economy and its role on the global stage.